Welcome to For the Record, an unfiltered view on current trends and timeless advice for surviving in the aesthetics industry. Whether you're an injector, practice owner, sales rep, or marketer, it's time to set the record straight. Each week we cut through the chaos and showcase diverse perspectives and winning ideas from the best minds in the industry. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record. Now, let's get started on this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of For the Record. And today we're going to talk all things skin and content creation. So we're going to have a double whammy. We have with us a guest who is really an expert in both of those. She has a spa in Arizona, Skin by You, where she's seeing patients Tuesday through Thursday, doing the full esthetician thing all day long, every day. But then it's like she's like Batman by day. And then by night, she puts on her Patreon hat, her content creation hat, also working with vendors like Hydrofacial to build out beautiful content, to teach us all how to do it, to educate the masses on being a practice owner and also a content creator, to increase your TikTok, Patreon, Instagram, all the things. And she brings us her magic today. So Victoria Boyle, welcome to our show. We're glad to have you here on For the Record.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited. I mean, I think content creation and all the things are something that we all struggle with as business owners. So excited to give some input on that today.
We definitely do. And Victoria, you've been an esthetician for 7 years and you've been a practice owner, I think, the last 2. So you have walked in the shoes of all of us who are out here on these streets trying to create content, but also trying to run a practice. And it's very, very challenging. I think you are mastering both. And so I want to unpack today really how the heck you're doing it, how you learned all of it, and what tips you can give us as we go on and try to do what you're doing, try our darndest to at least create decent content, not even good, just like to survive our content. So give us an idea kind of what your background is and how you got to this moment.
Yeah, I've, again, been an esthetician for 7 years. So everything from when you first get your license to, to this day right now for me has been a lot of growth, trial and error. I think something that I constantly remind myself is to be patient. Just because there's so much that goes into ins and outs of running a business. And I'm 2 years in now, but when I first started 7 years ago, I started, I worked at Massage Envy. I didn't know what type of esthetician I wanted to be. And I did that for a few years, especially being a young mom and trying to figure out, number one, being a mom and then running, having a business and trying to figure out what type of esthetician I wanted to be. It wasn't until a few years later that I discovered medical aesthetics. So I moved to Florida, worked at a med spa job. I actually worked at the front desk because I had no idea. I couldn't land a job when I moved to Florida for some reason, but I discovered the medical aesthetic space. I started as a front desk as a front desk position. And then I jumped my way. I pushed myself to get an opportunity to be on the back end of the treatment room side. Just figuring that all out in the beginning. And then it wasn't until I worked at a med spa that I really got to have that creative freedom and figure out what type of esthetician that I wanted to be. I didn't want to give massages all day and kind of give that spa-like experience. I wanted a mixture of both so that I could still make my clients feel relaxed, but also give them a, more medical treatment-based service. Figuring that out, that's when I got into content creation. So went from working at Massage Envy in California, moving to Florida, working at a med spa. And then when I worked that job, my husband and I actually have a background in photography. So we were like, what better way to bring high quality content to the space and still have that creative freedom to be able to create videos and tie in the two together was a really cool experience. But when I first started, I didn't know what I was doing. I had high quality content, but I didn't know how to use it. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with is I have all this content, or maybe I do have high quality content, but it's not performing well. So that's where I really got to dive deep, and I didn't give up after the first month of trying content creation and just figuring out what works well on social media. There's a lot that goes into it. And that's why I created my Patreon community so that I can teach people and just really give a different perspective of what the reality of being a content creator and an esthetician is.
Well, and it's, I think that probably the Victoria who's an esthetician, the Victoria who's a content creator wear totally different hats. both creatives. I think there's a creative part that goes into both of it, but I'm sure it's a very different setup, and I'm sure you're constantly task switching. But what I love to see is I look at your Instagram page. I've been stalking you as I always do for our podcast. Your content, a lot of it's you on video. You're talking
Mhm.
about the message, whatever the message happens to be, the takeaway message. You look, first of all, great on camera. They're beautifully shot, but it's you, and you're the sole talent, or the actress, if you want to call them that. You're the talent of your Instagram. And I think there's a part of it where even if you are not comfortable being in front of a camera, you got to get there, because in
Mhm.
2024, you've got to be on camera in front of your audience, talking to them. Static video with just like motion graphics doesn't work. I think
Mhm.
even these like sort of unposed people are like, oh, be authentic. Yes, but if you're trying to educate, you have to kind of have a plan. Like, what are you going to say? Why are you going to say it? Who's the audience? Who's the target? There's planning in
Mhm.
that. So how do you, as you're in the clinic all day, the things like just come to you in your mind? You just like stop what you're doing and film? Do you have to have like devoted time to get all this done? Like, how does the actual scheduling of this occur for you?
So I like to leave the client experience the same. So I like to give my clients a good experience. I personally don't like to have a camera while they're in their treatment. It's not what I'm good at. So I'm not going to force that. And I know that a lot of people have a setup, which I do recommend for some people. But for me, I like to schedule content days. So I will have a dedicated time, a 2 hour window to film whatever we need to do. My husband actually helps me film. So that's a huge help. We both have background in photography, videography. So he is he's amazing at what he does and getting those, shots that we both go back and forth with about. So yeah, I schedule out my content days because I truly, again, I want to keep the in clinic experience. I don't want any distractions. So I want that dedicated time. So I can not have a time limit on getting those shots that I want and not ruining the client's experience. So that's how I do it. And then for the individual clips, I have a ton to choose from. So it's not like I have one video that I make and I think that's what we all get caught up on is I don't have enough content, but it's really you can repurpose. You have so many resources to use that same content over and over and over again. So I like to use clips from each service and just make different reels from it. So it's a really fun creative process being able to do that. But don't take away the client's experience, in my opinion. But that's just me. I know other people do more like the lights are straight on during the whole time of the service, so it doesn't really affect them.
Well, you mentioned that. It's so funny. I have like 80 plus hours of content here for this podcast. I do a lot of like rants. I'm sure many of you who are listening know about my rants. And I think to myself all the time, I should be pulling those pieces out, making them their own little clips or videos.
Mm-hmm.
Get on CapCut, get on V, get on Canva, whatever it is, and make my own little videos. But I got to tell you, at the end of the day, I've done all these other things. So Victoria, I'm tired. At the end of the day, unless there's a person in your practice who's doing it for you, or it's your passion. We had Nunes Depanian on a few weeks ago. She was recording here in our office. She's like, I love it so much. I want to do it all the time. I'm like, I don't love it at all. I hate doing it. And I think if you love it, she's like, I would rather do this. And, this is kind of who I am as a human. I'm like, well, this is not who I am at all. Like, I don't enjoy it. I will film. I'll be an actress. I'll tap dance on like whatever you want on stage. But the back end work of it is pretty taxing. And I saw this morning you had a Patreon about how to do your CapCut edits. You're
Yeah.
trying to teach folks how to do it to make it faster, better, easier for all of us. How much of that do you spend time on? Like filming it is one thing, as you know, and then editing it and actually putting it into a format that makes sense and all the graphics and the things that come up on the screen. What is like
Mm-hmm.
the weekly allowance of time that you have to set aside for this to come to life?
I would say I probably have to dedicate for the whole week, probably a day. I sometimes I do it throughout the week so I don't get burnt out. But I will say when I first started editing videos, it would probably take me 2 hours for one video. And that was just so time consuming. And the more that I practiced, the more that I got better at it because I love content creating. So maybe that's not for everybody, but I genuinely wanted to get better. That's why I created, videos on my Patreon of my editing style because I do feel like it will help a lot of other people and just maybe make you think of something that you didn't think of yourself. But as far as, planning out time to edit, I can edit a video in anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes now for one video. So as you keep practicing and getting better, it won't be so time consuming. But I do also recommend outsourcing your videos. If you're like, I have a slammed month this week, I do not want to edit. And that's something that I've been doing lately is outsourcing my videos. I found a great editor through on Upwork, I believe, either Upwork or Fiverr. And he is amazing. He's so talented. So it gives our videos those extra touches that maybe the sound that it needed, or maybe a transition that it needed. So I'll even outsource if I don't feel like editing in CapCut, because CapCut has all of that. But sometimes I just don't want to be hands on all the time, especially as your business is growing. You shouldn't be doing that 24/7.
Well, and shameless plug, I have a great team here of editors at Aesthetic Next Productions who will edit your videos at any time.
Send me their information.
It's funny because I edit some of my own things. Like, I've got a great team here, but they're busy doing other stuff
Yes.
for the team. But I will tell you my cheat sheet on this. I use Opus Clip. It has AI built into it. It takes our podcast. It does all of it for me, all the captions. It gives you like a ranking of what's most likely to go viral. And so to your point, I just didn't have time to do it. So I use a cheat sheet now with my
No,
AI enabled version, but I love it.
yeah, I use that as well. So I also have a podcast. And so whenever I'm like, it's literally puts everything up within like 5 minutes, it's so nice to have that resource. I mean, it's crazy what AI can do.
Yeah, I think in content creation, for sure. I don't know if you guys are ChatGPTers who are listening, but maybe you are, Victoria. They just launched the 4.0, which is like on steroids. There's now a Canva plugin in that, so you can put into it what you want to build and hit your Canva plugin. It'll go make it in Canva for you. So you used to have to do the spreadsheet, put it in Canva, tell it what to do. Now there's just a GPT already built for Canva that you can just click the button for Canva and it voila, will build it. Now the images are kind of terrible. I would recommend still go like to Midjourney, make your own images and things, but it does give you like a format like for presentation, for instance. It will give you the things that you need, like the kind of the base, the base setup and structure, and you can make it like nicer and better. But I think in 2024 we have all these great resources that you have to have AI help, but you got to have a brain to figure out what you want to do. And I think as you look at your content even now, and your experience of things going viral, because you've got, I don't know, 84 or 5,000 followers on Instagram and quite a big Patreon. What are the kinds of content that you think people really cling to and that they look at and say, gosh, I want to learn about that? Is it patients that you're kind of focusing on, or I guess clients perhaps in more of an esthetician world? Or is it fellow industry people, fellow injectors, fellow estheticians who you're trying to reach? Like, what is your audience and how do you figure out what things to say to what people?
So for my initial marketing strategy, when I first opened the business, I actually didn't follow any beauty professionals because I didn't want the algorithm thinking that I wanted other beauty professionals to follow me. I wanted a book appointment. So I just really focused on my local community. I'm in Queen Creek, Arizona. So I was constantly engaging with local businesses. I was following back local businesses so that I could push out my content to locals and not other people in the aesthetics industry. Now, I do think that as you're growing your account, it's inevitable because people are inspired by you. People want to follow you because they're in the aesthetic space. So as you grow, you're going to get a whole can of worms. So it's really hard in the beginning. So like that's something that I really made sure that I did. I was like, I'm not following I felt bad because I love following other people in the aesthetics industry. It feels almost rude to me to not follow people back. So that was something I struggled with, but I just really focused. I'm like, I'm here to book appointments. I just opened a business. I had 0 clients in a new city. And I was like, okay, I love you guys, but I'm going to focus on my local community right now. And as my account grew, I really targeted my dream clientele by using those keywords. So something that my slogan was for the longest time was a premium anti-aging experience. And that just like blew up like crazy. And then I was constantly listening to what my clients were saying in clinic. So I was like, okay, what are the keywords that I'm hearing that everyone's saying? So one of the biggest things that I was constantly hearing is I want glowing skin without makeup. So I was like, okay, I need to use this in my practice somehow. So that's like my little slogan. When you look at my page, that came from my clients, like guiding you to glowing skin without makeup, because that's what majority of my clients were telling me. So I was really studying my clients and not focusing on what other people were doing, because at the end of the day, you're trying to attract clients, not other beauty professionals.
Well, and I think as an esthetician, you have a unique advantage because the thing about injectables, we all pretty much know when you get Botox, you're going to have your wrinkles, soften. Like, I think the mechanism of action is very well known. There's only 4 variants of it. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science. Yeah. I think skincare to me is like this black hole of understanding. I mean, because you can go to Sephora and see one kind, you can see like the lesser tier. You can go get medical grade. There's so many brands. They all do so many different things for each of us. And the chemicals, the things that are inside of them are so different. It's just like it's a menagerie of things. And unless you're one of you who knows it, it is very complex and very not scary, just like bewildering for an audience. And so I feel like with an esthetician, you can latch onto one ingredient and have 18 videos about what that one ingredient does, or one skincare, a moisturizer, an HA, whatever it is. And you could talk about it for 5 days because it does all these unique things. And there's a million of them. And so I feel like the content,
Yeah.
there's never a shortage of us who don't know the ant, like AM, PM. I don't know which is it, the serum first, is it the HA first? Like, who knows? Even just the how-to videos, I feel like are just incredible. Even for me, I love to watch people on Instagram talking about what they do in their skincare routines because I want to know too. And I'm not going to ask someone because I feel stupid, but to watch you tell me about it, I feel like it's not judgmental in my own home. I just think
Yeah.
there's so much content there. I think people really overanalyze what you have to make a video. Like they really,
Oh, yeah.
they over obsess over, gosh, is that impactful enough? Is that a big enough deal? It's going to take me, all this time to explain something. It can be little small, bite-sized, little minute chunks that become really compelling videos that help an audience and they'll save on their Instagram, which is great for all of us in the algorithm. So yeah, give us kind of like, what does that look like for you? If you're looking at your average day, what kinds of content do you think get the most hooks or people liking them and kind of going crazy for them? And how do we do more of that thing to be more like you, frankly?
Yeah. I mean, number one, again, patience with yourself. So as you're starting with content creation, like you said, don't overanalyze every single thing, because if you look at my old videos, it you would be shocked at the things that I said or just the way that I said things. It just didn't flow. So like the more that you practice makes perfect. Now I would say, like, what type of content creator do you want to be? Do you want to do educational style videos? Do you want to do mostly just in treatment? Because there's so many different ways that you can be creative. You can make an educational reel and just put text on it with the treatment behind it. Do you want to be talking to the camera? I personally recommend a mixture of both. So maybe if you're not good at one, focus more on the other. But people want to get to know you. They want to know who they're seeing. They want to be able to trust you. And that's something that has helped me a lot, is that number one, I have like all of my skin transformations on my page, but I have a mixture of everything so that you can really get to know me. And that's what I hear all the time. I get new clients and they say, I feel like I already know you because of Instagram. I've watched your videos. I love the way that you speak, and just getting a feel for your personality. So I would say whatever content creator that you want to be, that has to determine it, number one. But number two is figuring out your style and what works best for you, because I've done tons of videos on benefits of monthly facials and just putting the information out there. Or, I do a talking head video explaining what mandelic acid is, and putting little motion graphics on it with my face showing. So still making it a personal branding, but to where people can still learn, and people want to see these videos. They want to know how to use, like you said, I want to watch somebody do their skincare routine. I want to feel like I'm watching them. So it's all these little things that tie in together. And in the beginning, I had no idea what I was doing. And that's why I say patience is key, because as you keep tweaking things, it's really important to just do better next time. And it's humbling, because you'll see a video that you thought was going to do great, and it gets, like, in the beginning, it would get 500 views for me. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But it's also about perspective, because that's 500 people that didn't see my content before. So Instagram is free marketing for your business. So yeah, try not to overanalyze it and do your best with content creating, because it is hard. But yeah, just be patient with yourself. It's all a creative process that's going to work out. Definitely. I always tell people, you can't fail if you keep trying. Like, there's no way.
Well, I think to your point, 500 people, if your goal is to increase your patient load or your client load, that's a lot of eyeballs. I mean, in a given clinic, 500 folks who are engaged with your content, who might book for that monthly membership or that monthly facial, that's a lot of people. And so I think depending on what your goals are, I think that's one thing we also don't talk about nearly enough in industry is, if your goal is to be an influencer, then yes, 500 eyeballs, not enough. If your goal is to book a full schedule, that's a lot of people. And so depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish, first of all, your content's different, but also your metrics of success are really different. I think too, if you look at like a ChatGPT, to go back to that, if you do all these things they say to do, like, top 10 things for skincare, top 10 whatever list, or biggest, pain points, what about your area? If you're in Florida versus if you're in Montana, sun worshipers and dry skin, like, it's different things, different areas, different geographies. You have to be very cognizant of like where you live in the country and like what things speak to your clients versus like the top 100 trends in the US. It's just gonna be a little bit different, from where you are. But I think people do get a little bit sidetracked about, am I an influencer or am I trying to book in, my schedule? And are manufacturers involved? Am I doing content for what you do, hydrofacial? Is it for revision? Am I giving free marketing to Elastin? But not to my own brand? Like, I think there's a part of it too. It's like,
Exactly.
who are you speaking for? And are you getting paid for that? And if not, is it bringing people into the front door, which is what it needs to do to kind of pay off the time that you're spending? And so how does that
Oh,
work
yeah.
for you? I know you're doing content for vendors as well. What does that look like for you to do in a day to day? And is it like contract work, or are you just so fabulous? They're like, hey, we just want you to do stuff for us.
Yeah. So typically when it comes to like brand deals, the company will reach out to me and I'll create a style that works best for my audience. So it is a partnership. It's a paid partnership at the end of the day. So I'm basically, still showcasing hydrofacial because I still want to promote things that I believe in. I think I always want my brand to be authentic. So I already carry hydrofacial, for instance. So I market things that I personally love. And so brands will typically reach out to me and I'll partner with what brands I believe in, what I stand by. And yeah, it's a creation process in the sense where brands will reach out to me now because they want that style of content because it performs well. And now I can gauge what that looks like for my clients. And too, I mean, if you are, let's say you're focusing on content creation, if your page blows up, you can take it in so many different ways. You can, create a course, you can do an online platform like I am, you can charge for your posts or even just, the things you're promoting. So, yeah, it is a completely different realm as far as who you're trying to attract. And that's why I didn't even realize in the beginning that I wanted to be a quote unquote influencer or, with this many followers now. My page has grown so much, but as I started, I thought that I just wanted local clients in the door. That's all that matters. And that's what did matter at that time because that's what was paying my bills. I'm like, I need people in the door. But as I progressed, I think it can change for everybody. Now I'm like really happy with being in the clinic 2 days a week and doing what I love and that I'm super passionate about helping people transform their skin. But I also get to have a creative side to me that I've always had since I was literally a teenager, probably. Yeah, doing photo videos. So I get the best of both worlds. But it definitely, like you said, does matter who you're trying to attract because a lot of people are like, I need to go viral. I need to get this big post. But like virality, truthfully, does not bring in clients. I've had so many viral videos and I'd be lucky if, a few are in my area because it's people influenced across the world. So, yeah, virality is a huge point as well. I don't recommend people like chasing that as well because you could do one video and it gets you 1 million views. Let's say it gets you 10,000 followers, but then you post a different style of content, but it's not your branding, like you would just have to have a strong brand on your page.
I think there's so much to unpack there. I think the virality thing is so important. People chase that. I'm looking for what end? Like, unless
Mm-hmm.
it's putting people in the seat and if your primary goal is practitioner, right? Whether that's an esthetician, an injector, a surgeon, whatever your role is, if that's your primary goal is to get butts and seats for treatment, virality probably is not your game. Like, that's because
Mm-mm.
to your point, they're all over the country or the world. If you're trying to get podium somewhere or be a speaker on stage at a big event that maybe isn't even about aesthetics, it's a content creator event or something, then go for it. Like, by all means, do what you got to do. It's part of the process. But I think we do get very confused at what the metrics are. And I think if you're a local person in a local market doing local work, you have a different level of virality that you need your entire community to think that you're great, right? You need to be
Yeah.
maybe even local branding, local advertising, doing local events, having your face there, physically being on site to do something with, your little tabletop booth kind of thing. It's a different game. And I think your content might be more educational and focused on, again, what happens in your city, in your market versus kind of the overarching industry things. But um,
Exactly.
I was just,
If
oh,
if
go ahead.
15,000 people are, I mean, if 1,500 people are following you, but majority of those are clients, that's way more beneficial for your business than 30,000 followers and the sliver of them are potential clients. I mean, for example, I have posted in the past, I have an opening for Tuesday at 2 p.m. and nobody books it. I have an opening in my Patreon, to build your aesthetics community. 3 slots get filled right away. Like it's just knowing your audience. And again, my audience has shifted now, but in the beginning, if you're trying to get local clients in the door, engage with your local community and don't chase virality.
Well, that brings me to another question because you had a different Instagram before. I think you were Skin by
Mm-hmm.
Victoria. Now you're Skin by You.
Mm-hmm.
Easy. So do you split those pages in half? So at some point, I'm looking like an Erica Berry. She is now an influencer for all of the aesthetic industry, but she also sees patients, which luckily hers is kind of mixed and molded because they've grown with her throughout her, kind of her come up, if you want to call it that. If you're a person starting today with a brand new platform, do you split out the part that is focused on your fellow injectors and estheticians who want to grow their business, and then you have a group for your clients that's different, or do you do it all together? Like, how does it split? I think about the algorithm mainly. Like, how does it split what you're focusing on and who you're following to have them kind of all melded together into one? Like, what's the right answer in 2024?
Yeah, I definitely, I kind of retired my Skin by Victoria account, to be honest. So as I grew Skin by You, I just kind of, I posted there occasionally, but I don't think mixing the two would benefit me because people are confused. I was confusing people at the end of the day. They were like, why do you have two accounts? Like you have Skin by You and Skin by Victoria. And I just kind of retired that account and focused on one because it's all about branding, in my opinion. So, for instance, when I first started, I had like my logo as my profile picture and it was not personable. People were not following it. And I had great videos, but like nobody knew who Victoria was. It was just Skin by You, who is this local company liking my post. And so I saw that that wasn't working. So I tweaked it into my own personal branding of like Skin by You is Victoria. This is what I do. I have those key points of what I treat, my niching down in those because I don't want to overwhelm the client, which is really important. I talk about that a lot too, so that the consumer doesn't, so that they book that appointment so that they're not so overwhelmed. But yeah, I mean, your branding doesn't have to be like just you two. It could be a picture of your team. It could be you promoting everybody's services still, but making it a personable brand, whether that's like a, you know, company or it's you, which for me personally, it's just me right now. I'm making that my brand. I'm making it my personality and not just like another company.
Well, it's so interesting, even looking at us right now. Like, if you guys are watching this on Spotify Premium or on YouTube, Victoria's screen is black and she is so beautifully lit, like cinematic. Like, I feel like I'm watching, you know, like a celebrity doing an interview somewhere. I'm in this bright white area. Even in photography, I like all of our headshots here to be bright white. I'm a pageant girl, right? And pageant girls, we do white, we do bright, we do, you know, under eyes are white, the face is glowing, the hair is big. It's a difference even like to that level. I do content at a very high level here. Obviously, we have a professional group that does it with us. You're doing it at a high level and it looks completely different.
Yes.
My Instagram for AR is like a hodgepodge of different things because our audience is so, we have so many products that we sell. It's so different. Your website is beautiful. It's got all this like stuff moving around and videos in it. It looks so cool. It's very much a distinct brand. I like all of our pages to be black. I want them all to be dark. You know, I think it's people kind of, you gravitate into what you want your brand to be, and you have to kind of become that. It has to kind of, you have to own it. I think when you kind of start down a path, if you go to your point viral or you do a lot of content in a certain way, you can't abruptly change it, but you can, I think you can branch out, but certainly like there isn't a right or wrong way, but whatever way you choose, you got to kind of go, you got to go all in, you know, you got to kind of choose your avenue, choose your lane. And it sort of becomes who you are as a creator, but also who people think you are. And so I think part of it, like the whole being authentic thing, because you're stuck with it. So if it's not who you are as a person and you get down this path, you're like, I hate that brand. I hate that who that is. Like, well, unfortunately, you're kind of in that zone for a hot minute. You can't just like, you can't take a quick left turn and change it. You've got to sort of embrace it. So I'm sure lots of time went into that and thinking through that. But your website, by the way, is gorgeous. I am obsessed with it. I know Jared helped some with that.
Thank you. Yeah, Jared, I mean, we used all of our own videos, which I highly recommend, like you adding that like personal feel to it. So those are our own videos on the website. And Jared just did such a phenomenal job with our website. He put everything that we had in our own vision to life, which was just so beautiful. But I wanted to ask you really quickly, what would you say that people know you for? Like, what is your branding? How do you stand out? What is your niche?
Well, that's a good question. I think I'm probably most known for like business building things. I think people would say that I'm like a fixer. Like I like to build things, make them bigger, make them hopefully better, stronger. So that's kind of my niche. My niche is like, whether it's content creation, it's the meeting, it's aesthetic record. It's like getting into the thick of things and like growing out of it probably is what I'm known for. And I think content wise, I'm very much to my discredit, I want it to be perfect to go online. I want it to be the perfect Instagram post, the perfect, my team will tell you, like they say, I'm going to give her something to hate when they present me an idea. Like, here's a thing for you to hate. Because I'm a psycho about things. I want it to be the right verbiage, the right words. I think the tone of voice that we use here is so critical. I'm a tech company who's also in aesthetics. I have to be both, sexy and aesthetics, but also like techie and geeky. And so marrying those two things together, there's a whimsical voice as well that has to go with it. That's kind of like making fun of the fact that it is hard. It is hard to do tech stuff. That's so part of who we are and our colors. Like 276 EFA blue is our AR color. I know
Uh-huh.
that I know the RGB by heart because it's on everything we do. That blue is everywhere we go. It's blue, black, and white is on all the things that we do. And so there's just part of it in the branding wise that when you're not known yet, we started out 300 or so accounts in 2019. Now we have like 9,000. No
Wow.
one knew who we were. And so it's like if you've got to pick one thing to invest in, build a brand because as
Hmm.
you post more, you do more, you appear more places, they always know it's you. Your brand is the
Yeah.
same, your logo is the same. If you don't know who you are, and people who are watching you also don't know who you are. And so I think you've got to figure out what those things are you do well and be a
Yeah.
thought leader in that. I think our thought leadership here is about business building and practice building and being, I don't know, being profitable, being smart about your books, your traceability, all the things that you do at med spa. That's kind of our brand. And if we venture
Yeah.
from that, people call us out on it like, wait a minute, that's not what you do. You're kind of outside the lines here. So we've clung to
Yeah.
that as our niche. And I think it's worked so far. But it
Yeah.
also makes it easy to think about your next product or your next adventure because you kind of know where you play. It's not so, it's open. Like I can build anything you want me to build, but I know what to build for this industry. And I think it
Yeah.
does it gives you higher guardrails that make it a bit safer to take calculated risks, if you will.
Yeah, no, you're an expert in your own industry. You're a boss lady, though.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know if I'm a boss lady, but I'm definitely trying to survive here. But I do
Aren't
think,
we all, though? Well,
yes.
you would never know. You look great.
Well, thank you. I was looking at your site this morning about you have your husband on there, you got your kiddos on there.
Yeah.
Super cute. Like that's the kind of whimsical thing I love. Like you've got your family on there, like your son's a future CEO. You have your husband on there. It's like stay-at-home dad. It was so cute.
Yes.
But I feel like I know who you are now. I feel like I
Uh-huh.
know kind of your personality has a fun, all this very serious and well done stuff, but also it's kind of like fun whimsy to it. That's like, oh,
Yeah.
you're a real
We
person
have to
too.
add a little bit of personality to the site, right?
Yeah, and it brings me to the question that Jared and I recently did an event together at AM. We had a class about virtual content, and I said I teleprompt everything, and he was like, oh, he thought I was like the second coming of the devil. He was like, you teleprompt? I'm like, yes, I teleprompt everything because I am a talker. And I
Yeah.
also know to keep it within that 60-second mark or 3 minute, whatever my goal is, 3 minute mark, to get the things out I want to say in a concise way that's clear and hit the high points, I have got to put it on a teleprompter. And I know how to
Mhm.
talk on one, I know how to do it. Like it's how I feel safe to get out what I want to get out. When
Mhm.
you're doing all your videos, because you do so many of them, do you do a teleprompter or not?
Absolutely a teleprompter.
Oh,
I
yes.
I just feel like it's more efficient, it's quick, it's to the point, everything's done. You can get it done in so much faster versus I mean, you can literally plan things out. Let's say that you're like you have a hook that you want to say. You're like done, done, done. You had all your 3 points that you had to say in 60 seconds. I mean, it's just easier. You can get things done so much quicker.
It,
I mean, I wish that my brain could memorize that, but like who has the time for memorizing all these scripted, conversations or posts? It's yeah, I definitely use a teleprompter. I take advantage of that.
and when you write it out, you use words that make sense, that are common words. You don't go
Hmm.
over indulgent on big fancy words that aren't good on video.
No.
And you think through the logic of what you're saying. I also told Jared, I said, if I don't do the teleprompter, first of all, I will use some crazy words no one understands because, I'm like an SAT kid. And also, I will talk around the topic because of how I understand it, not how you understand it. I've got to say it in your words so that you understand what I'm talking about. And I was like, you gotta teleprompt. And all the fluffer words people use, like the filler, all the ums and I can't handle all that. So when
Oh
we do
no.
things here as a team, I'm like, hey, we're going to film a video about XYZ. And they start writing it out. It's like the content drastically changes as they start to write. It's like, wait a minute, that wasn't important at all. That was like a filler I was going to use. I just
Oh
think
yeah.
there's such a benefit to it. So if you're a person who's like, oh, content creation is so hard, you're just reading, honey. You're just going to put the
Yeah.
words on the screen and read them. It's not that hard once you figure out how to read without your eyes moving. You just read.
Yeah.
You just read the words. It's not so
You
bad.
can, I mean, you can even teleprompt on your iPhone now. Like there's so many ways that we can utilize this, these marketing tools. I mean, it doesn't have to be as complicated as we think. And I always tell people, talk to as if you're speaking to a third grader in as far as simple terms go, because the average person doesn't know what hyaluronic acid even is. I mean, just treat the concern. If you have dry, dehydrated skin, this is why you need this product, versus hyaluronic acid is naturally derived. It's all these common things that people are like, get to the point. I have no idea what you're even saying.
Yes, and I'm a big believer, which I know some are not, in captions. I have a child
Hmm.
at home and I work all night long and he's asleep upstairs. and I'm watching Instagram things a lot at night doing content research, and I want to read it. Like, I don't want to hear it. I
Yeah.
can't turn it on. I can't turn it up. I want to read it. And I'm also, in the middle of an office doing things, and I think some things are not always appropriate for the workplace. So
Yes,
I love
absolutely.
captions. And I think if you're going to do captions, this is my hot button, Victoria, is what I cannot stand. If you're going to use the automated caption generation from Instagram, go back and check your work.
Oh, yes.
I spell check. I do commas. I make sure the words are correct because it doesn't always know our words, right? Just it's not
Yeah.
supposed to. If you're going to use these automatic generators, you have got to go check it and make sure, because if that goes viral and you spelt things incorrectly or the wrong words are showing up, oh, what a tragic thing to happen to you.
Oh no, all these
Just
eyes for you to
yes.
misspell a word.
I mean, it takes an additional 2 minutes to read it. It's a 60-second
Yeah,
video. It takes 2 minutes to read it and fix it. Like, just take the extra time to do it. I just cannot
exactly.
handle that.
I agree. I agree. It's the little details that matter that people are looking at that just won't ever say anything. They'll just look at you and be like, wow, look what she did.
Yes. And, I think it's also part of it when you have a business, you're sharing things about being a business owner, like what your
Hmm.
perception is of being a business owner, but also as a, client facing provider. But I also look at people who now are really going viral, if you want to call it that, in our industry, and they're sharing all their personal life too. Like, I know when their kids are doing things, I know if they're doing, IVF, I know if they're going through, sometimes even divorce with their husband. Like, we know all the
Hmm.
baggage, right? We know all the things. So I
Yeah.
think in some way it makes us feel close to them as a colleague to be like, oh, wait, they're also struggling. Like, we're all having our own trials
Hmm.
and tribulations. But as a patient or a client watching this, what is your view on that? How much of your personal life do you share to endear them to you? And how much of it do you feel like is kind of off limits and should be like much more clinically focused?
Yeah. So I sprinkle in my personal life. I think it is important to, I will post my daughter, like she had her first birthday and I posted a picture with me and her. And like people love that. I have clients who are like, oh my gosh, you and your daughter look so beautiful. How was your party? But I don't really share like personal things if I'm like going, out to dinner and like having a drink, things like that. I just don't want people to, I want people to know me, but not to the point where they're like, oh, you went to, you know, in and out the other day. I don't know. Like, I think that there is a fine balance of like keeping professionalism and like personal life. And I know that a lot of people do share um, a, a lot of personal of their life, but me personally, I just always want to keep it professional. Um, so yeah, I sprinkle in my personal life. I don't like to show what I'm doing on a daily basis. And honestly, for me, what performs better is what I'm doing in clinic and then sprinkling in like my daughter's first birthday party, things like that. People love it. I mean, I look at my content and what does best. And to be honest, when I post a picture of my daughter or my son, it gets half the reach as like if I'm showing what I'm doing in clinic. So I'm like, if you're there to show your work, I think that you should sprinkle in personal life so people can get to know you, but at the same time, keep it majority professional. Because I don't know, I just feel like there's so much room for somebody to take things the wrong way these days or for you to share your opinions. People might not like that. And I think it's just best to keep it professional, in my opinion. How about you?
Well, I was a sales rep for Galderma for a couple of years, and you learn as a sales rep early on that you should not come in a fancy car, don't show a fancy house, because at the end of the day, if you're asking someone to give you money for something, and you walk in looking like, you walked out of the Louis Vuitton or the Birkin, magazine, and you've got all these fancy things, they're going to look at you and be like, why? Like, why am I helping you when you're like begging for them to buy your filler? I think as a clinician, it's the same risk. If you are constantly posting your amazing vacations, your homes, your cars, your fancy things, and a
Mm-hmm.
client walks in and they're like, "My gosh, this is outrageous." It's hard to justify the cost of things when someone's looking at you saying, "I know what kind of life you live. I see it on Instagram. I see you
Yeah.
showing us all your fancy things. I'm a working mother of two, single mom. I need help with it. Like, help me out, sister." I just think there's
Yeah.
always a risk there to your point. Even though there's nothing wrong with it, I don't mean that. You've earned whatever you are showing on Instagram. I have no doubt about it. If you're a person doing that,
Yeah.
it's not that. It's perception is reality. And I think
Exactly.
there's a fine line where they will be cautious of doing business with you if they feel like they're getting taken advantage of because they're paying for your lifestyle. So that's
Oh, yeah.
why I'm just always like super cautious about it. You know, I go do fun things all the time. I go places, do cool stuff, and it's never on my Instagram. My Instagram basically is non-existent as a human. My
Yeah.
business Instagram is great because I do AR's Instagram, but my personal Instagram, don't waste your energy. It's not worth it. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing good going on there.
No, it's so easy for people to get the wrong idea of you or have preconceived ideas. And, you're right. I mean, I see people post how much they make on their Instagram or flaunt that. And I'm like, I could never, because I have clients that follow me on my Instagram. Like it's just, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel personable. You're right. Like if you are working, if you're a stay-at-home mom or whatever, you're struggling, to get by, that doesn't make you feel good. It's like, no, I want to see results. I want to see transformations. I want to see what you're doing in clinic. It just makes your clients uncomfortable at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think again, there's nothing wrong with it. If you have success in your life, like kudos to you, go do it. But I think there's also a
Mm-hmm.
time and place where it puts people off sometimes. But
Oh yeah.
kind of switching gears a bit back to your actual practice, you do some cool things that I do want to touch on before we go. You have this acne boot camp, which I think is really, really compelling. You've got
Mm-hmm.
this really cool, as we talked about, Jared, lead magnet. That's like coming to get your free skin analysis. How
Mm-hmm.
are you, like in your physical practice, also extending your brand to how you treat patients and clients when they walk in the front door? I think that's one of the things that we have a gap with. Is people have an amazing Instagram presence, they have an amazing Patreon, amazing TikTok. It's all phenomenal. Then you come to the practice and it's like, it's kind of like a letdown because it doesn't have the same air about it that your online presence has. So how do you bring that and weave it into your everyday experiences that patients feel like they're getting the same you that they see online when they actually come to the clinic?
Yeah. So when somebody walks in my door, I try to kind of make my Instagram similar to what I am in person. So you see my relaxing services or you see my transformations. That's typically that is what you're getting in clinic. But to make the client experience different, and to make it unique is honestly, I just like immediately get to know them. I don't just shove them back into my treatment table and just kind of go and do the service. I like to get to know my clients before they, lay on my treatment table. So whether that's them coming in immediately, I immediately give somebody a compliment. Because I know that sometimes when people come into my clinic, they're insecure or they may not feel good about themselves. So that's something that I do. I like to uplift others. So I'll just say, hey, how are you? You look so beautiful today. I love your dress. So I immediately always start with a compliment. And then I make them comfortable. So I'll, offer them a water always, asking them how their day is, where they're from. So like making that small talk and really getting to know them before they lay on my treatment table. And then directing them. I think that's something that you have to do is you have to be really confident in what you're doing and you have to direct people. If you're not directing people where to sit, where to put their stuff, what to do, like they're never going to feel that confident. So when I take them into my treatment room, I'll tell them where to put their things. I'll give them their water. I'll have them, hey, I'm going to have you sit down so that we can verbally speak before we do the service. So that number one, I can make sure that you're a good candidate and that you can know what to expect during your treatment. And going over their intake form with them makes all the difference in the world. And again, I start with like small talk. I will get to know them as we're like going through the intake form. So if they're coming 30 minutes from where I'm at, I'll say like, how was the drive? Do you have kids? Things like that. So it's not like, what are you here for? What are your concerns? It's all about getting to know the client, and then setting in those expectations. So when they come into my clinic, they're like, okay, I know what to expect during this treatment. I always want my clients to feel comfortable when they're receiving the treatment. So I always let them know like, hey, if at any point anything feels uncomfortable or you want to speak up, like this is a safe space. So I want you to know that you can communicate anything with me because a lot of people don't want to say anything. If their skin is laying there, they're like, this doesn't feel good. They're not going to want to say something. Some people aren't comfortable. So I over explain everything. And I think people really appreciate that. And they feel like I'm getting to know them because I am. They're not another number to me. I just want to get to know them. And all my clients are like family to me. I mean, I know that there's like definitely a balance to where I don't like, you can't let somebody in too much, but I can genuinely say that every single one of my clients feels cared for and they feel like it's a personable experience and that I'm not just getting them in and out of the door. So that's something that I do when I first get to know them, when they book that first appointment. And it just flows naturally. I mean, as you keep practicing, you'll get your groove and figure out what people like love you for. So hone into that. And I think that's something that people loved about me was over explaining and making sure they're comfortable and that the experience is good.
When you mentioned there this idea of like advocating for yourself, I mean, I have a little boy at home. We're working on that right now. We're focusing on that as like his big 11-year-old lesson is like you've got to advocate for yourself. And
Uh-huh.
he will even say, "But Mom, adults don't want to hear it. They don't want me
Yeah.
to advocate for myself." And so I think what you just said is important to let a person know in this space, you can advocate for yourself and you can tell me that it doesn't feel good or that you're nervous or that it's not what you wanted. You have my
Mm-hmm.
permission to tell me and to check me on it and say, this is not what what I thought was going to happen. I
Yeah.
think that is such a lost art. I think as you go into the aesthetics industry in general, because people don't know what to expect, right? They're coming in probably in many cases like brand new to this industry with you. They often start with an esthetician first before they go get injectables. They don't even know what they should be advocating for. They don't even know what
Mm-hmm.
they should be raising their hands saying, I'm not sure that I want this thing. And so giving them permission to be okay with asking questions and double checking and just making sure that they're, that they're jiving with you, I think is really important. It's a lost
Mm-hmm.
art. I think people are, it's not disrespectful. It's just people who don't know the answer. And they want you to tell them what's going on and what's happening. And over explaining is obviously a great way to do it. But yeah, just
Yeah.
letting people say, advocate for yourself and just tell us what you do and don't like. I mean, there's been things I've gone and had done that I'm like, man, I should have told her that I did not like that. And I didn't. Like even I
Yeah.
had recently had my hair dyed. It's too bronzy. It's too, I don't love it. It's not white enough. And I know my girl, I love her to death. And so I didn't say anything. I'm like, well, I'll just suffer in silence. And I went home and told him like, oh, my hair is so dull. Why
Oh.
would I do that? Right? I paid all this money for the service. I know what I expect. And she does as well. We just had a miscommunication in it because I did not say I don't love it. Now
Mm-hmm.
she would have fixed it had I told her that. I'm sure she would have fixed it. I didn't say
Yeah.
anything. And so now I'm like, ugh, I'm irritated. We could have solved the whole problem. And I just been like, you know what? Raise my hand. I wish you could go a little bit lighter. We would have had
Yeah.
everything resolved. But now I'm suffering in silence, and then I'm going to be mad at her, and the beat goes on. But because I did not advocate for myself, and I feel like that is a number one thing. But even with adverse events, med spas, when it
Mm-hmm.
burns too long, it hurts too much, it's lasting too, whatever these things are. When patients don't feel empowered to ask a question, this is when bad things happen. So yes, I love the fact that you're telling them to advocate for themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always hone into the word experience. If you see my Instagram, I use the word experience a lot. So I think it's good. It's so important for the client to have a good experience. So creating that perfect atmosphere for them. So every little detail does matter. And it has me over explaining those things has saved me so much. I don't have a single client complain because they got to ask what they wanted and they knew what they were getting into before they lay down on the treatment table. So like get to know your clients before you just lay them down because half of the time people will not speak up and they don't know what they're getting into. You can't
And
assume that the client knows what they signed up for.
and their understanding of it is based on where they've gone before. And it's also a big miss for us is because I've had this done somewhere else, it's not we've had it done with you. And you may have a different
Mm-hmm.
process. It's like when they come in and say, the big meme in injectables. I've had 4 units of Botox for my whole face. Like, no, you haven't. That's absolutely insane. But they have been told that somewhere else. Like, you've got to set the record straight when they come to your table and to your chair because you are not that provider. You're not that practitioner. You got to tell them how you do it. And I feel like we also kind of skip that step. Like, oh, yeah, you know how this works? Great, move on. Because we're all pressed for time. We're trying to get them in, get them out. And there is a beauty to saying, I'm going to do this differently. And so the results could be different. And here's how it's going to differ. Because if not, they're going to hold you to the same kind of litmus test they held their other injector to, or esthetician to, which is not the right yardstick for you, right? You're doing it all differently. And so I don't know. I think explaining everything over and over again is always just communication in general is like a lost art. And I'm glad
Yes.
that you're doing it. It's great.
Thank you.
Teach us all. We need to all be doing it. Well, as we kind of
Yes.
wrap up here, you've got things obviously with content creation going, you've got Patreon going, Instagram going. Where do you see yourself with all of this happening? Like let's say 5 years as our guess here. Are you doing more content creation, less in the clinic, or are you going to keep doing living this double life forever?
I mean, my goal would be more trainings, speaking more, things like that. But for now, I definitely would say that I'm happy with content creating and having the balance between being in person as well. But I think my long-term goal is definitely to be more hands off in the business and to be able to put my energy into different areas. So I'm super excited to see where it goes. I don't have an exact answer. So I guess we'll take it slow and see where we are in 6 to 12 months.
But now you have to hire people and train them and have them take over so you can go do what you want to do. That's
Yes,
a whole different bag of tricks, I can tell you right
I
now.
know. One step at a time.
Yeah, the hiring and the firing and the training and the onboarding, all that it's a lot of work. And that's where I think people, as we mentioned, just doing all the things and wearing all the hats, like there will be ebbs and flows, right? There'll be days where you're like, I can't do what I want to do with content creation because I've got to get this business situated so I can actually go
Yeah.
back to doing more content creation.
Yeah.
And I think the permission that you give yourself to just say that it's not going to be perfect every day and like you got to ebb and flow, and the schedule will change just no matter how much you don't want it to. It's going to change because the business demands are just never predictable. In the word, I
Hmm.
think you have it all figured out, and then you don't. So yeah, I think there's just a part of it where you've got to go with the flow, sister. Just go with the flow. But
Yes. And delegate
hopefully,
your work as you grow.
yes, you mentioned Fiverr, Upwork. I mean, some great resources there for people who are
Yes.
listening. Whether it's using a GPT on chat, on Chat GPT, it's
Oh,
getting a Fiverr resource, it's getting Upwork. We use Upwork here for all kinds of things. There are ways to find talent to help you do things you're not good at or that you don't have time
hmm.
for that are really, really phenomenal resources. So if you're a person who's kind of like leery of doing that, to do it all, you have to have help. It's just not
Yeah,
possible to do it all on your own. So go find help and
absolutely.
find, and
I
they're
agree.
very affordable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have so many tools, we have to utilize them. I mean, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not at this point.
Yeah, I was editing a podcast on the way here, and the guy says he's an accountant. He's like, I don't inject Botox, so you shouldn't be doing accounting. I'm like, oh, but we think we can, right? We think, oh, we'll
Yep.
do our own books. Like he's like, but I don't inject your patients, so why are you doing the job that I do so well? I don't do the job
Yeah.
that you do so well. It's like those are like those moments of like, yes, why are we doing this to ourselves? Let's go delegate things out that we don't. Even content creation. I mean, you're an expert in this. You do this all the time. You sell courses with this as a topic. You're going to be better at it than somebody who's not doing it as a
Hmm.
full time gig. So they should just outsource, to people like you or take classes. So yes,
Absolutely.
love it, love it, love it. Well, I thank you for coming on today. Learning about what people do in their day to day is always fascinating, but also the content part. I'm just so passionate about it to hear how you're doing it,
Yeah.
the level that you're doing it. I think it's just very interesting. And
Thank you
keep
so
up,
much for having me.
yeah, and keep up the good work as an esthetician as well. I think we need people who are in the practices doing the skill and also teaching the skill. I think we do have a bit of an unbalance right now in our industry. We have a lot of people who are teaching it full time, but they're not always doing it full time. And so there is a bit of a disconnect. So I think the fact that you're staying with one foot in the clinic, doing all the things and also then teaching them as well is really important. So I
Yeah.
can't wait to see where you go in 5 years or 6 months, whatever it is, and what stages you're going to be on next. So
Yeah.
I'll stay
Thank you
tuned.
so much for all your kind words and having me on today. You were such an inspiration. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much. And to give us one last note, where can we find you if we want to buy courses or subscribe to your Patreon?
So my Patreon is an online platform, so it's a community for you to learn, connect, and grow your aesthetic business. So videos drop monthly. That is called Optimize Aesthetics on Patreon. So that's where you can find us. And then my personal Instagram is Skin by UAZ. So that's where you can see all of my content creation, all of my videos. So you can find all that information there as well.
And I'll put all that in the show notes as well so you guys can find Victoria and get to Patreoning with her and get to learning and hopefully making some really badass content. So thanks again for
Yeah.
coming on, and we will see all of you guys next week for another episode of For the Record. Bye, guys. Thanks for listening to another episode of For the Record. This podcast is not intended to provide legal or medical advice. It's for entertainment, education, and information purposes only. For more information on this week's guest or to get started with Aesthetic Record, email us at info@aestheticrecord.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more fresh perspectives on disrupting the status quo and surviving in the aesthetics industry.